Phaedros had practically tuned out their voices as he stared up at the creature warily, the clicks of their armor reaching a fever pitch that was beginning to echo throughout the cavern. The insect's head turned and lifted toward them, and instead of the face of a centipede or a spider like Phaedros expected, he saw his face. No, that was just him seeing things. It turned back into something more befitting an insect. It peeled itself off the wall silently, then faded into a vague silhouette, and then reappeared on the floor as if it had just landed from a fall. There was a slight tremor from the impact, but otherwise it made no sound. Phaedros looked back behind him to see his arguing companions and Daxia, then behind them to see that another insect was fading in and out of sight from the building they'd just come from and skittering down the wall. "We're surrounded!" Phaedros finally managed to shout over the noise and turned to face the insect coming straight for him. When he completed his turn, though, he did not see the centipede-like creature from before. Instead, it was his father barreling towards him, with two blades shimmering in the dark from an unknown light source. Phaedros brought up his sword just in time to parry the blow as it went for his midsection. The blades clashed soundlessly, and Phaedros was forced from his feet. He stared up in horror at the visage of his father. No, not his father. The bloody corpse of his father, left to die alone in the wilderness. Zaharias's mouth moved, but no voice came from it. A single bloodshot eye staring down at him with indignation as he reared up for another strike. Phaedros was paralyzed. The past week and a half of emotions shoved down deep inside, bursting forth just as a flood of light blanketed the cave. The insect returned where his father had once been, though it wore his face with large mandibles gnashing and bite marks lining his features. It scurried off into the dark, and he heard Dom swinging his hammer behind him just before there was another flood of light, followed by silence. Phaedros's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready. In a few weeks, he'd die, just like his father did. His body was shaking, and the air that filled his lungs never seemed to be enough as his breathing quickened. A hand went for his arm to pull him to his feet, muffled voices ringing through his ears before he finally recognized them as Dom's. They were in open communications now. "Phaedros, are you all right?" Phaedros jerked away, scrambling to his feet. His final tide of sanity snapped. "No! No, I'm not all right. I just got attacked by my dead father. You and Zenobia are supposed to be helping, but when I'm not screaming at you both to stop fighting for 5 seconds, you're back at it again. I'm going to die. I'm going to die down here." He spat in both accusation and panic, voice echoing through the cavern while his gaze snapped between Dom and Zenobia, who were both trying to avoid eye contact. He was about to say more when Daxia cut in. In her hands looked to be a giant flood lamp. "Phaedros, you need to calm down or this'll get worse." Phaedros bit back the urge to throw or break something in frustration. "Oh, it'll get worse? How can it possibly get worse?" His head was starting to feel light, as if those words stole the last of his precious oxygen, and all around him he swore he saw twinkling eyes traveling through the dark. They were surrounding him now. He knew it. This was going to be his end. I can't. He backed up, away from the others, one hand clutching at his helmet, as if it was the thing suffocating him. That was, until his boot hit a section of stone that crumbled beneath him. In an eye blink he reached out to grab the edge of the stone, but that too crumbled, and Phaedros fell into the abyss. When he looked up towards the hole, he saw Dom carefully peering over the edge of the rapidly shrinking hole before he hit the ground with a crunch of kitten. He had landed square on his back in a new room, though it didn't look to be the one that the staircase from before led down into. The new room was massive, with empty frameworks hanging against a wall, counters sectioning off one corner with a line of stone blocks separating one portion of the room from the wider space. On the opposite side, the floor indented into 2 deep pits that extended to either side into domed tunnels. The crater he now lay in was right beside it, stonework cracking beneath him as he stared up at the ceiling above. He lay there for a long moment. The panic rose in swells. He was about to scream before he heard a voice crackle in from his helmet. "Do not worry, friend. I'm coming for you." "Wait, Dom, we have to stay with..." Zenobia tried to cut in before a silhouette of black chitin fell from above. Phaedros snapped out of his trance to throw himself out of the crater, the call to act becoming a clarion call through the chaos of his anxious mind. Dom came crashing down where he had once been laying, feet first. The man staggered, fractures crawling up the legs of his armor. Phaedros stared, unsure of what to say before his mind settled on. "Dom, what are you doing here?" Phaedros asked, exhausted. "You said your dead father attacked you, yes? I was not about to let you have to face more of those things alone." A moment of hesitation followed before he added, "And this is not the first time you have been upset with me since I have joined your hunt. I wish to make amends." Phaedros wanted to be angry. He felt it rise in his chest, but he forced it back down with a sigh. "You're trying your best, Dom. But after we're out of here, I can't have you and Zenobia butting heads anymore. Don't do it for her sake, or your own, but my sake. Please. You respect me because I beat your challenge. Respect my wish for this." Dom stared at him in silence before nodding. "I will try," he answered finally. Zenobia spoke over their comm channel. "You both alive down there?" Phaedros looked up, seeing Zenobia peering down now alongside Doxia. "Yeah, we're alive. I don't see a way of getting up easily without clawing our way back out the roof, but that just might make more of it crumble away. Is there any way to bring the cart down?" Doxia's voice joined the channel. She must have had some sort of external setup for it. "Not unless you want it in pieces, and to make an even bigger crater. You guys made a lot of noise going down, so you're going to have some friends heading your way." That made Phaedros' stomach lurch, but she continued talking. "We'll make our way down to you. Just stay put." Zenobia spoke up next. "Just try to stay calm, Phaedros. We won't be long." Dom and Phaedros exchanged glances, and even though helmets hid their expressions, Phaedros hoped Dom could see the fear in his eyes, begging him to save him from the uncertainty that surrounded them. Dom gestured down. "They will be coming soon. If you want to see them for what they are, now is the time to learn life sense." He turned his head. "Here they come now." From all entrances, apart from the roof, they came. Dozens crawled out, fading in and out mid-motion, and when Phaedros looked at them, he saw a myriad of images take the space where their forms were. He saw his father, a corpse dragging itself along the wall, another, the same man, but in his armor, crawling on all fours, a young man with determined eyes and gnashing fangs. He saw himself, both young and impossibly old, a warrior, a cowering animal. He saw the beast of his nightmares loom higher and higher like an impossible shadow, with teal eyes burning like two globes of all-consuming fire. "Phaedros! Close your eyes and focus!" Dom shouted, the urgency in his voice compelling him to obey. Silence followed before a hammer crashed against nothing. "Listen to nothing else but the sound of my voice. What you see is not what is before you." Phaedros could still see the images burned into his mind. "I can't," he said, voice strained as he could imagine those silent creatures swarming around him now. His father's death, his brother's disappearance, the stress of the impossible task that lay before him. How could he focus on anything else? "You must!" Dom exclaimed. Phaedros could hear the wind pick up and the earth tremble from the weight and strength of Dom's blows. But no crunch of chitin or indignant hisses of insects ever followed. "If you do not, I will have to face these things alone, and I will die." I do not know about you, but I have plans much bigger than a funeral here. I don't know how, Phaedro shouted back, his hands tightening into fists as he struggled to find some connection, any connection. You do not need to know how. It is not a skill learned in a textbook, but a feeling. Phaedros heard Dom stomp by to the other side of him, and another tremor followed. Feel the fire in your soul. It is this light that makes all that is dark and horrifying flee before it. But it is not the only flame in this world. You are not alone in the dark. Feel the heat of my fire, Phaedros. Another quick series of steps past him, followed by a rush of wind, echoed through the chamber. It is the guiding light that will help you see. Phaedros took deep, trembling breaths. Maybe he had a point. To try and connect with all life was hard, but if he could connect to just one other, then perhaps it would be easier. He reached within himself, focusing on the warm heat of his burning potential. It centered him. The feeling was still unnatural to him. Depending on his mood, it was either a fire that made each step more certain than the last, or it was a horrifying reminder of his impending doom. He tried to focus on the former, letting the warmth wash over him. A star lay within him. Without sight, he could still see it. A mote of light surrounded by white fire that flickered upward soundlessly. The flame looked weak, sputtering as if an unknown wind threatened to snuff it from existence at any moment. This was him. All that he was, condensed down into a single, finite expression. A weak fire. Yet even the weakest fire still fought back the darkness. And just like in the night sky where the stars shone upon the world, his light was not the only one, even if the others felt so distant. With one final, deep breath, he tried to search for those other stars. Nothing happened at first. Just the cold, empty void of uncertainty. But out there, in the dark, he felt the faint whisper of heat somewhere else. A fire, similar to his own, alone in the darkness. Did it struggle like he did? Did it feel the same fear that he did whenever he stumbled? He focused on that heat, breath calming, and when he felt like he was ready, he opened his eyes. The darkness surrounded him, but there, clear as day, he saw a glowing white star burning defiantly. The flames around it licked at the open air. The flame itself was thinner than he expected, forming a small layer around the pure light of the soul it surrounded. The longer Phaedros stared at it, though, as the soul danced through the darkness, the layer of flame seemed to grow larger. Was that Dom's potential? The fire grew thicker and fuller by the second, yet there was an oddness to the flame. It looked like the tongues of fire were scared? To burn their full intensity, the flames muted by choice? He tried to search for more flames, and he could see two more above and in the distance, moving quickly through the ruins. Zenobia and Daxia, he was sure. The former's light was much like his own. A weak fire surrounded it, the flames like fingers desperately reaching out for life as potential slowly burned away. The latter seemed to glow more than burn with the tame flames meant to create, where once there was only destruction. These were his companions, his friends, and seeing their light meant he was not alone in the darkness. Not anymore. With more confidence, he tried to feel all else around him. And then he saw them. Dozens of insects, close to his original first impressions. Some were shaped more like spiders, others more like centipedes. There were no more images of him, or his father, or other people he knew. Only what they were. Phaedros wondered why he could see Daxia's and Zenovia's flames through the walls, but not them. But there was most likely no answer that anyone knew. What he did know was that Dom had been keeping them off of him, and it was time that Phaedros helped him. He rose to his feet, focusing on the warmth around him as he gripped his blade in both hands and kicked off to strike at one of the Teoskin that was about to flank Dom. The blow connected, cracking the chitin and sending it skidding off course. "Did you find your flame, friend?" Dom asked, a grin audible in his voice. "I did," Phaedros said with more relief than he was expecting. "I'm ready to fight." Dom laughed. "Ha! Good! Good! My armor plates could use the break. I'll watch your back. Zenobia and Daxia are on their way. And I will watch yours. Let us get to killing gods, yes?" Phaedros felt excitement well within him, and the two set to work. Back to back in a twisting circle, they struck and lashed out at the insects that came for them. They were strong, but Phaedros had nothing to back into but Dom, and vice versa. They held their ground as horrors beneath the world assailed them from all sides. Two fires dancing in tune to one another. Two fires creating hope where there was none. Two fires that grew in heat and intensity in defiance to the world that sought to snuff them out.